Hi, kia ora, and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have really inspiring conversations with artists living in and from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm your host, Mandy Yakic. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. You might have noticed that there's been a little bit more of a break than usual between this episode and the last one, which is going to be the case going forward just for a bit, and I'll just be releasing when I can, which should be every 2 weeks or so. So I'm glad that you are still joining me. Thanks for being here. This week I'm speaking with James Watkins. James was born in Oxford in the UK in 1984 and moved to Auckland, New Zealand at a young age, kicking off a lifelong journey of travel and creative exploration. James thinks of his intuitive painting practice as limitless and sees defining his practice as a certain style or describing himself as a certain type of artist as restrictive and unnecessary. In this episode, James shares how he never really felt creative as a young person, but discovered photography in his late teens. From photographing beautiful things around him, James went on to explore writing, poetry, and arts journalism, and then made his way to abstract drawing and painting in his mid-20s. We discuss materiality, why he likes to use more than one medium in a painting, why he likes to create what he calls history in a painting, his techniques for starting a painting, and the metaphors he sees in his work. He talks about how and why he listens to a painting, and how abstraction for him is a form of therapy and self-expression. James thinks of excitement as one of the ingredients and resources he leans on most in his art practice, and when he loses that excitement, his creativity retreats. We dive deep into the pros and cons of Instagram for artists and explore his approach to building community, connecting with galleries, and sharing his work. This episode is really like no other. James has many interesting perspectives on life as an artist, and ways of thinking about and responding to art, creativity, and process. To be honest, talking to James has really made me think about my own life as an artist and my artistic process. I hope you feel the same. You can see the work of James Watkins in the New Collectors group show at the Frame Workshop and Gallery in Auckland, New Zealand from February the 20th to March 8th, 2025. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Pretty relaxed.
That's good.
Yeah.
Looking relaxed in the studio. It's lovely to have somebody here in real life. First guest in the studio of 2025.
What an honour.
What an honour. So big warm welcome to the podcast. Now, I'm very excited to talk to you about your practice. I've been looking into your work and it's totally motivated me to actually get making myself. So, looking forward to hearing all the details. Mm-hmm. Can we go back to the beginning? You were born in Oxford in 1984 and immigrated to New Zealand as a child.
As an infant, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell us about your childhood.
I feel like I had a pretty, idyllic, upper middle class, eastern suburban Auckland by the ocean kind of vibe upbringing. We had boats. We had a fizz boat, then we had a bridge decker, then we had a big boat. So every summer we'd go out to Great Barrier and Waiheke, and we'd go out for a month at a time, fishing, dolphins, all that kind of stuff, which of course when you're a kid you don't really totally appreciate. You want to go back and play PlayStation with your mates or whatever. But that being said, I did really enjoy it, and we'd play board games and, so I think it was good, pre-computers and social media, have the family dynamic, and really, really lucky for that. And then just not much else to really, I didn't really have a lot of exposure to anything creative or anything. My sisters were kind of the creative ones. I was always good at reading. So I was always good at language and English, but I had no, all through my young years or even through my high school years, I had virtually no interest in anything creative, at all. Drawing, painting, music. I didn't do any of those things, yeah.
Which is quite interesting, isn't it? That you finally discovered it later.
Yeah, it was strange. Photography was the first thing that I got into, yeah. And that wasn't until I was 19 or something.
So high school art wasn't a thing that you were doing?
I have no memory at all from high school art, apart from one time when a girl brought in a boomerang, and because I played cricket, I got volunteered to throw it, and I threw it, and then I shattered it on the tennis court, and she cried.
Oh, no.
So that was the only memory I have. Sorry, Tanya.
hopefully Tanya's listening.
Hopefully you've forgiven me. Yeah.
Oh, dear. I mean, you must have thrown it with such force.
I did, but then also I think it was. It was quite ambitious to think that it was gonna just come back and I was gonna catch it. I don't know what the plan was, but it didn't go well. So yeah, I didn't have any. I just had no interest in it, but also I had no idea what I wanted to do either. I would just take like economics and science and stuff because I thought that's what my dad wanted me to do or something, because I didn't have any more interest in that or less interest in that than anything else. And the only consistent thing I was always good at was English and writing, and I remember my English teacher taking an essay that I'd written as a punishment, because my mum was a librarian at the school, so that also tied into my literature stuff, And he literally took her an essay that I'd written as a punishment into the library to say, James wrote this amazing essay, and it was me just, I don't even know. I think I wrote it. I think I wrote about a little family that was living inside the tubing of the ceiling of the classroom or something. So yeah, I guess I kind of was always a bit imaginative in that way, but I still had never, I just played sports. So I didn't really identify as being a creative person, and I wasn't even interested in it, and I wasn't even really exposed to it either. So yeah.
And then at some point in your 20s, you had your first solo exhibition of photographs when you were living in Golden Bay. So how did you go from somebody who didn't think they were creative to someone who was taking photographs?
Yeah, well, the Golden Bay wasn't a solo. So the Golden Bay show was actually it was like a local show. Just to clarify that, not that it's a big deal. My first actual exhibition of photos was on Great Barrier Island.
Okay.
But so I kind of actually had a little bit of an epiphany, probably the only one I've ever had, where I was one day working at a Anzac ceremony, and it was dawn ceremony, and basically there was just an incredible sunrise, and it was all the veterans were kind of silhouetted against the sky. It was at the Auckland Domain, and it was before smartphones, and I just had such a overwhelming urge to take a photo. I can't even explain it. I was like, God, it's so beautiful. I can't believe I can't take a photo, And I just saved up and bought a camera. Yeah, I was like, from that one feeling, I was like, I guess I need to take photos. And then at the time, it was kind of coinciding with my sort of experimentation with psychedelic mushrooms and obviously smoking loads of cannabis because I was 19 or whatever. So I would just walk around, take loads of photos of whatever I wanted, and it was mostly nature and macro stuff. And then I've always been kind of self-driven, so I taught myself how to do websites. Because I was emailing the photos a lot, and I was getting all this feedback. And then I thought, well, rather than email all the photos, I'll just create a website, and so people can come to the website. This is way before no one had websites at this stage. And I built it in Dreamweaver with tables and everything. And I even had a message board randomly. And I'd start to get messages from overseas being oh, I really like your photos and stuff. And that was kind of how it began, really. I don't even know how old I was. I think I was 18, 19.
So that was late 90s, early 2000s.
So I went, my first year of high school was 1998. So what's that? 98, 99, 2000, 2000. Yeah, mid 2000s. Yeah. And then from that, I just kind of that's when my identity kind of started to go more towards photography. People would be oh, James is a photographer, or I would say, I finally became it takes a while, and I think this is actually a big part of identity and insecurity. You meet a lot of people who are too sort of insecure to sort of say, I am an artist, I am a painter, I am a photographer. And I can remember that feeling of crossing over into that moment where people would ask me what I did, and I'd always be oh, and then finally I was oh, I'm a photographer, and then I'd get them printed, and I'd hang them up places and restaurants or anywhere, cafes or anywhere that would have them, basically. And that was kind of that was pretty much it then. And then I just sort of I just kept shooting, really, and I started traveling as well. So I'd travel and shoot. and that's how I ended up in Golden Bay, and then that's how I won the award for, which was cool, and I guess that gave me a bit more confidence, and then after that it was like, yeah, by that stage I was very much like really into my photography. Yeah.
Isn't that a great story? I mean, it's inspiring for people who are sort of starting out on their own creative journey, that you just came to that and made it happen.
Yeah, I think it's like you have to. I think the big thing about artistic practice is you really have to want it, you know. And if you want it bad enough, you'll just do it and you'll make it happen. And it's like you'll start to get. You have to take away. You have to sort of actively take away the obstacles, you know. And some of those obstacles are like psychological ones. So yeah, I guess back then I was less hungry, and I was like, you know, like I was young and I was like really excited, and I think it's like that's the thing that's really permeated my practice the whole time, is that I'm just really like excited to do like to do the hikes or to do the walks, and then to like get in my studio and see what I'm capable of. So it's like excitement is kind of one of the main ingredients. I think that as an artist, it's like one of the resources that I kind of lean on the most. Yeah, and when my excitement, when I lose excitement, is like, or if I go into more like depressive episode, like I find that like my creativity will go down, you know.
So you need like, excitement. Yeah. Fair enough. And so your photographs at that time, what were they like?
They were very like a lot of like minimal stuff. I was a lot of sand, a lot of a lot of lines, a lot of like horizon lines, a lot of clear skies. Just it was all, and it's the same thing that's always been. It's just what I think is beautiful, really. And so like a lot of nature, yeah, and a lot of photo documentary. So it's like basically like I never pigeonholed myself as a photographer to be any kind of photographer, and I've never really worked as a commercial photographer. I've had like jobs where I've gone and shot things, but my practice, for my photographic practice, is very much just about my relationship with the outside world, you know. So. And which is and yeah, so I just get drawn to whatever's in front of me, whatever's beautiful, and then whatever's interesting. So that could be people, places, things. But it's all about sharing for me. For photography, it's about sort of, and it's about showing people how beautiful things are, and that's why I've never had a lot of like people will say a photograph I've taken, they go, "That's really beautiful," you know, and it's like for me, it's like I don't really feel like they're talking about anything I've done. So I can kind of agree. I agree. That is a beautiful thing, and that's why I took the photo. So
yeah,
it's more about relaying beauty and trying to like because even you know, even living in New Zealand, you can become very complacent to it, you know, and it's like important to, I think, remain sensitive to it, and because it's so like replenishing for us, you know, like it's like what we kind of need, and that's what we evolved in, you know. So it makes sense to me that people who are trapped in the city and trapped in apartments and not going outside, not exercising, not walking, not going in the sun, like they get like it doesn't feel good, you know, versus go for a walk in the Waitakere for like 3 hours and go down to the beach by yourself. You'll feel good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's so energizing. Yes, it's definitely a good thing to do. Something I like to do daily with the dog if possible.
There you go.
Yeah. So your photography really has gone all the way through, and then you picked up painting at some point. And it's really interesting that you obviously love to travel and you enjoy challenging yourself and going to live in different countries. So in 2010, your first trip out was, well, probably not your first, but you went to Australia for 5 years.
Yeah.
And you were writing there and taking photographs, and doing arts journalism.
Yeah.
So how did you get there, and what was happening with your practice?
Well, I was living on Great Barrow Island before I left, and things were getting pretty bohemian, for lack of a better term, and and it was like the summer was kind of ending, and it was like everything was still cool, but I won't go into all the sort of ins and outs of the lifestyle. Not that it was super shady or anything, but it was, I don't know, it was just time to leave the island.
Yeah.
And I just got like an opportunity because I'd actually previously lived in Melbourne for like a year when I was 21, and then I'd come back to New Zealand. So I had friends in Melbourne, And one of them was just like, "Oh, come to Melbourne." I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were, but he was like, "Come stay at my house and we'll like work out a job for you or something." Because he kind of had like an agency and a company, and he had a lot of things going on. So I went over there, and then I don't know if he basically we had like an idea where I would start this like online magazine thing because I kind of I guess I'd done a little bit of personal writing. And I was also super into like poetry and stuff at this stage. So I didn't mention that my website actually had poems on it.
Mm.
Really horrible, terrible ones, I'm sure. Actually, maybe not. I don't even know. I kind of, but like nothing. I definitely have to vet that material before I share it with anyone. I don't even know how I'd find it now. So I was really into writing already at that stage,
Yeah.
and so I was really, and then I'd also like sometimes in when I'd share like a body of photos, I'd write like I don't know a few paragraphs. So it always kind of came naturally to me. And then so by the time I got to Melbourne, and then there was idea to do this like not a magazine but like an online thing. I felt confident that because I could build websites and I could write and I could do photography. I felt like, oh yeah, I'll do a project like that.
Mm.
And then one thing led to another, and I think it was because I was a photographer, I really admired and enamored like painting. Because it was for me, it was like real creativity, whereas photography is more about documentation. Not to say it's not creative, but painting was really impressed me. And so what would happen is one thing led to another with the project, and before long it kind of grew, and I had like other writers, and I had like editors, and I was working as an editor then, and it kind of all grew up nicely. But basically, the main thing I was doing was interviewing painters, and then they would become my friends because we'd have these really intense conversations, like 3 or 4 hour long conversations, and I'd write these huge articles, like massive like Q&As, and I'd transcribe them all like really neurotic, like word perfect, and I'd like really put a lot of effort into them. And so obviously I'd be interviewing my favorite painters like in the country. Like I would go straight towards, I was always really ambitious as well, so I'd always like send emails to like artists who I thought, oh, they probably won't want to talk to me, but like they would.
Mm.
Anyway, so I befriended these guys, and then before long they're my friends, and then I was in studio with them. And then just almost through like osmosis, I was like, they're like, "Oh, do you paint or whatever?" And I'd be like, "No," and then I'd just start doodling with them or whatever. And yeah, it just like turned on something in my brain. I think I was about 25, 26 at this stage. So literally up until that age, had never basically done a drawing, apart from what I did at like kindergarten, I guess.
Mm.
And then I just sort of taught myself to draw and do, yeah, at that stage I was just teaching myself how to draw and like just starting to get interested in visual art a little bit, yeah. And so that's kind of how I kind of segued into the visual art stuff more, yeah, in my mid-20s, yeah.
So I guess that was the beginning of your art practice, and possibly of you sort of thinking of yourself as an artist. Would you say?
Yeah, I can't remember when I definitely wasn't talking. I mean, I never equated being a photographer and a writer with being an artist. Not to say that they're not art forms, of course, but at that time, I would identify as a writer and a photographer. And then it was also quite confronting for me because my best friends were like some of the best painters in the country. I've always been kind of coming at painting from this slightly insecure place where like I'm a beginner, and I'm comparing myself to people who have been established painters for like 20 or 15 years, and painting is one of those things where it really is about like time at the coalface, like there's no shortcut. So like in a way I am still behind them because they've been painting the whole time. But so yeah, basically, so what happened is I ended up moving from Melbourne. I moved to Sydney, and I kept writing, and I just kept drawing. Really, I was still doing drawings, and I was still interested in teaching myself to draw. And then by the time I'd moved to Europe, I was living in London. I remember at that stage actually sort of starting to take my drawing a little bit more seriously. Like I just was doing it all the time. And then by the time I was like in Istanbul, I was really drawing all the time, and I was actually drawing and kind of doing small paintings on paper. And that's kind of what I did for like months at a time there. And so by the time I moved back to London, and I there was a time in Oxfordshire when I was looking after my uncle's house where it was like pre-demolition, and I'd had an area to have a studio, and that was kind of the first time I had a studio. And I was still only working on paper then. I was doing on like big pieces of paper, and so it wasn't until maybe like 6 months later after that where a friend of mine was like, "Hey, I'm going away for the weekend, and you can paint in my house. And if I buy you some canvases, can you paint me a canvas? You know?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, that sounds cool." And then I remember that weekend, like he had all these like his neighbor upstairs was an artist and brought down all this like big pots of like house paint and stuff, all these different colors. And I remember thinking, "Oh, cool." And I just kind of went crazy that weekend painting, kind of using what I'd learned, because at that stage I had been painting a bit like on paper, like learning how to use oil pastels and stuff. But it was kind of that moment when I must have been about 31, 32 maybe, where I finally was like working on canvases. And I think I did like kind of 1 meter by 1 meter or something, and I had a blast, and everyone seemed to really like it. And so from that moment on was kind of when I started painting more seriously. Yeah.
And were you able to devote your career to that, or were you working as well?
In London, I was doing the setup I ended up with in London was because I've always lived a very like streamlined, financially streamlined life. So like I've just become really used to not having a lot of the sort of expenses that a lot of people sort of factor into their lives, you know? So like just stuff, I wouldn't really buy stuff. And I wouldn't really be going like out a lot to like restaurants and stuff. I would just, so yeah, I survived. I had one photography gig where every month I'd shoot like, I had like a photography gig where I do like food photography. So that was kind of like really easy gig, and that would pay my rent. Only just. And then I'd also kind of along the years, I'd done a bit of like handiwork. So I'd like built a couple of houses with my uncle. So I was like relatively handy. So in London, I also supplemented that with like doing some like handiwork for my friend when he needed like stuff doing, or I'd help him on projects, you know? So that kind of helped me have a bit more money to actually exist. But apart from that, then yeah, I'd just be in the studio. And at that stage in London, I was doing these, what is it called again? Guardianship properties, which are these like kind of like buildings that have been earmarked to be demolished, but there's a company that will come in and make them habitable, and you can go and live there. And it's super cheap, and but you can also like kind of not trash them, but you can. It doesn't matter if you get paint on the walls and stuff.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I was living in these
It's
spaces.
almost like squatting, but a bit more official.
It's basically to stop squatters, yeah. So it's like a squatting, but it's a bit more official, and it's a bit less derelict, so to speak.
Yeah.
So at that stage was like London when I was probably for the first time seriously painting, and I had a little solo show, kind of like a cafe gallery, you know, like you know how they go, and that was kind of like my first painting show, and I guess at that stage what I would have been like, I don't know exactly how old I was, but 32, 33 maybe. Yeah.
That was somewhere between, is that right?
Yeah. And that was kind of just like in all honesty, I didn't really have much of an idea of what I was doing in the studio, and I don't probably still do really, but like it was more of just like what I had lying around, and I just sort of throw it together into a show. Yeah.
It's quite amazing in a way that you came to that point where you thought, I'm going to paint, and I'm going to spend a lot of time in my studio, and you started to, you know, that became your main focus. It's quite a hard, it sounds for you like it was quite an easy transition, but it can be very hard for people to get to that point.
I think it comes back to that excitement again, you know, because I was really excited about it. So it was like, also like, it's, painting is kind of a proving ground for like what we're capable of, you know, and that I found really appealing. And because I was coming from this writer photographer background, and because all my friends were these amazing artists, I always kind of felt like, not that I had to prove myself to them or anything, but even to myself to like prove what I'm kind of capable of doing, you know. And I was really hungry for it, and there's not really any other way to explain it other than I just really enjoyed it. Yeah. And that's probably still why I turn up in the studio every day.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we have to do something with our lives, and we may as well do something that we really enjoy and something that's like deeply therapeutic and relaxing versus doing something that's stressful and not therapeutic.
Yeah, which is sadly what a lot of people end up doing. Or,
Well-
you know, having a job that that doesn't really feed them in the way they'd like to be fed, you know.
Well, most people, yeah. So it does kind of also like around the age of 18 or 19. I think I touched on it before. I had like quite a lot of psychedelic experiences, which kind of, I just kind of made the sort of just blindly walking into sort of the modern world and having this like grinding out this existence deeply unappealing.
This is a very small break for our Creative Matters notice board. I'd like to tell you about Art Collective, which is actually where I am working part-time at the moment. It is a showcase for emerging and established artists, and it's an online art gallery and also an on-site art gallery of fine art prints. We've got really exciting plans to extend into original artworks of different media. So if you'd like to pop by, if you're passing, and come and say hi, we're at 77 Barry's Point Road. You can find us online, artcollective.co.nz. Anna Gibbs, who I spoke to in episode 156, is having a solo show at the moment at Little River Gallery in Banks Peninsula, Christchurch. She has actually sold every single painting, which is unbelievable. But you can still head to the gallery to see her beautiful paintings if you're in the area until February the 24th. And the notice board concept is really just a way for me to make a little bit of cash to support the podcast, but also to give artists and gallerists an opportunity to share something creative with my audience. So if you're interested, just DM me on Instagram or get in touch by email. $50 for a 2 to 3 sentence ad. Now back to James.
I've always been really willing to not have a lot of security. I always just believe that everything will be good and everything will be fine. And as long as I have a roof over my head and food in the fridge and a book to read, like, and I've got friends around, like, it's kind of enough.
It's so good. It's such a great way to live your life. How do your parents feel about that? Are they sort of old school, thinking you need to get a real job?
Not at all. They've always been super supportive, actually. So, like, I think early on they were kind of, they just sort of realized that like that was the way I was going to do it, you know? So I never had any pressure from my parents to do anything or be anything. And I definitely recognize that like some people grow up in totally different circumstances and there's a lot of pressure for them to be a certain thing or a certain way or have a certain career, which I think is like incredibly damaging and like suffocating.
You speak of identity. Has your painting helped you with some sort of self-analysis and sort of expressing your own identity in some way?
In a way, I feel like painting is a way of like almost like assaulting your sense of identity. So it's like a place of like where we redefine ourselves, you know. So like my identity was, photographer, writer. And that's really what people associated with me, and that's what I associated with myself. So it took me a long time to sort of prove to myself that I am a painter, you know. But it's worth asking the question like around identity and stuff, because a lot of people have a lot of insecurity around being an artist or expressing themselves, or I'm not an artist, or some art teacher sort of 30 years ago told them that they can't draw or they're never going to make it, or their parents said they can't do this or can't do that. So we all walk around with these stories in our heads telling ourselves like what we are and what we're not, you know, it can be very limiting. I'm not creative, I'm not musical, I can't dance, like all this stuff, you know. So it's like, I think as Van Gogh says, I'm not really big on quotes, but I always thought this one sums it up really well, and I'm definitely paraphrasing, but it was like, also it's translated, but it was if you have a voice in your head that says you cannot paint, then paint and the voice will be silenced. And I just think that perfectly sums up the creative anxiety and insecurity that people experience, because it's like painting is such an affirmative act. It's an undeniable act. Like it's to make a painting and to even move your brush on the surface, you're like taking control, and you're saying I have sovereignty over who I am and what I make and what I do. And also then it becomes undeniable. No one can deny that you painted this image. They don't have to like it, but they can't deny it. And so that's a very empowering element of painting for me. And yeah, in terms of, to bring it back to your question, in terms of identity, I think, yeah, I have used it as a tool of empowerment to to literally redefine myself. Yeah, and I think it's an ongoing evolution, and I always think of painting as like an invitation. It's like inviting us to be courageous. It's inviting us to confront limitations that we have put on ourselves, and then the but the mysterious and the sneaky and the insidious thing about it is that, like, once we break through certain limitations, there's a whole new like level of one. So it's like, okay, I'm not a painter, I'm not an artist. Okay, so then I'm going to do a painting and prove to myself that I can. Okay, well, what kind of artist are you? You know, what kind of colors do you use? What kind of things do you paint? What kind of materials do you use? And a lot of painters, a lot of artists will get equally stuck in those areas than they do the other area of, I'm not a painter. So I guess what I'm trying to do in my practice is continually evolve and expand and break through all these levels that I'm putting on top of myself. So it's like, but you know, as you break them down, like at the moment, for instance, it's like, okay, well, you know, I was talking to you before, like, I think my work's a bit too illustrative, you know? So it's like, okay, well, I have to try and make different kind of paintings, you know? Or if people associate a certain kind of painting with me, then it's like my style or whatever. You know, I saw an artist the other day just in their bio describe something, blah, 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 my signature style. And I thought, to me, that's like, I can't think of a worse phrase to describe any kind of artistic identity, or I would never, ever consider myself as having a signature style, you know?
It's like sort of categorizing yourself, which can be limiting.
Well, it's very limiting, and it's also kind of the opposite of what painting is to me. Painting is limitlessness, and it's also like a way of dialoguing with, it sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's kind of a way of dialoguing with like infinite potential of the cosmos, right? Because like humans are an expression of the cosmos. We are of the cosmos, you know? And I think like, I think whatever is the grand being or energy of the world or the universe, it's willing us to be creative, and because nature is creative, it literally gives birth to us, you know. And so it's like, it makes sense to me that like why it feels so good for us to express ourselves is because it's kind of like what we're sort of made to do, you know. And there's a reason why singing and dancing and painting and photography and playing guitar and all these things make us feel so good, whereas and the absence of them makes us feel really empty.
Yeah,
you know.
And that's the sad thing about, you know, what's going on in schools at the moment, with the sort of lack of a focus on creativity and not really valuing it, and going back to the sort of old school academics.
Yeah, I guess also I don't want to like put too much emphasis on creativity as if it's the only way people can find their meaning. I guess what's more a more open way to frame it would be that's just like, find what you're truly passionate about, you know? And so it's like, I also deeply admire like builders and doctors and scientists and all that kind of stuff, and all that actually, and which is in their own way is still really creative as well, and expressive, you know. So it's just I don't want to like sort of elevate painting as this only way to achieve this sort of like, you know, Zen kind of state of mind or anything like that. But like for me, it's just the tool that I use to like challenge myself and to like use it as a way of like engaging with the world. Because it's like, once you start painting nature, you start looking at nature like a painter, and then you're constantly sort of synthesizing your experiences. You know, if I go to the beach for a walk, I'll take my camera, and so I'm instantly like curating what I like. I like that plant, I like those shapes, I like that line. I'm already thinking about how that will work as a painting, and so it's actually changing the way that I see, you know, which I've already kind of benefited from photography as well, because that also teaches you to see too, you know. So by the time I'm getting back to my studio and painting, I've got all these photos in my mind, all these experiences in my mind. I've got sketches that I've done on the walls, or then I'm doing more sketches from the photos. So by the time I'm actually at the canvas, I'm sort of saturated and all, and I've also got all the paintings I have been making up until that point. So I'm literally just, all I have to do is turn up, and I'm really just a conduit for like all those things I've experienced and seen, just synthesizing all that back through me onto the canvas and like hoping for the best, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is so great. That is exciting. So you think of yourself as a mixed media artist, is that
Yeah.
right?
I mean, yeah, I do. I mean, I am a mixed media artist. I don't
But
know.
you think of yourself as a painter.
Yeah, I guess I do. I mean, yeah, I guess I'd like to, on a good day, yeah.
And I mean, it's really interesting looking at your work and the way you bring different mediums into your paintings.
Mm-hmm.
So you're using oil paint and acrylic paint, and sometimes both in one painting, but then oil sticks and oil pastels and charcoal and graphite. How do you actually approach a work with lots of different mediums?
I mean, there's a more boring answer, which is like, start with water-based stuff first, then come in with oils. I mean, that's more scientific because like you can't really like slap, acrylic water-based paints on top of wet oils because it just doesn't work. I mean, you could, but it won't be very archival and it will peel off, and it is so. But I guess the more interesting answer is like, I mean, part of my, in a way, because I'm not a very, I'm not a conceptual painter at all. I when forced to, I will write a little blurb about what the paintings are, and that's a little bit of storytelling for collectors and for galleries and stuff, and people. Yeah, I can place the work. I can contextualize the work for people if they want, But I'd rather people just stand in front of my paintings and feel something or not, But from a material point of view, so like I said, I don't think of myself as a very conceptual painter, and in a way, my paintings are really just about painting and material. So it's like, and I just happen to give them the infrastructure of like the organic world, So yeah, the reason why. What I love about using different materials is it's like I don't see any reason why I would limit myself in my practice, and so I see it as just sort of like, how can I create more and ever increasingly unpredictable textures and moments on the surface of the thing. So when I begin a painting, I think we were talking about this before. So I never have any idea at all about what I'm going to paint. I might have an idea that I'm going to try and utilize certain motifs or like a certain landscape, maybe, but mostly not, because I try and totally eradicate any sense of expectation about what's going to happen, because when we have too much expectation, just like in life, it will inevitably be let down, And then also, if we have too much expectation about what a painting is going to be, we're already kind of judging it in the context of our expectation, which is really important, not to judge a painting at all, and not to like fall out of love with the painting. I don't know what it is about the material stuff that really interests me so much. It's just more like, I love the interplay, and I love the sort of alchemical element of it, and the unpredictable element of it. And I just like to, like, if I only ever used acrylics, or if I only ever used oils, I'd only ever really be achieving one sort of feeling,
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to have different types of feelings. And I've actually like had to do a lot of work, because I I don't know why painters never, it's almost kind of like people like to like prioritize and sort of have, as if there's sort of a hierarchy of materials where oil paint's at the top and everything else is below, and it's because the masters use oil, and so I have to use oil, and if I'm not using oil, then I must not be a good painter. I'm not a real painter, Whereas like some of my favorite painters only use acrylic, and for a variety of reasons. Like a friend of mine who's an amazing painter has like he's very sensitive, like allergies and stuff, and he just the chemicals and the oil doesn't jive with him in the studio, so he only uses water-based stuff. And it's also important to note that when I say acrylic, I more mean water-based. So it's like I use a lot of house paints. So I use a lot of house paints, and I go into paint shops and I ask them for like mist tints and whatever's lying around. So I guess it was also one of the reasons why I like to have a lot of different materials, is because I'm a very instinctive painter. When I'm looking at my canvas, and this is actually quite a good tool I'd recommend everyone trying to paint like this, is that like it's much more about what the painting wants than what you want, right? So it's like when you try and instill your own sort of agenda on the painting, you'll create a lot of tension. And it's like, and you'll constantly be in tension because the painting won't be doing what you want it to be. But when you listen to the painting and let the painting be what it wants to be, it takes a lot of pressure off, and it actually, then you're in more of a call and response. And also another benefit of painting in that way is the painting will take you places where you didn't think you could go, and it will take you outside of your comfort zone. So it's like I'm constantly in a state of like insecurity in my studio. Like my paintings always look terrible before they look good, and most of the really good ones always come out of like the days or the periods of time where I truly think this painting is not going where it needs to be, or like, and I really I don't trust a painting until until there's been like a problem to deal with, And my practice is really about beginning and creating like a sort of maelstrom of problems, all interconnected and on top of each other, and it's like such a weird, complicated like Rubik's cube that like only I can solve, And it's like, it's not to say that another painter couldn't solve it in an interesting way, but I'm always trying to challenge myself to create such a complicated problem and pull an image out of such a mess that like it's gonna require me to be quite like hands-on with it. Like I can't, like I'm gonna have to deal with that problem, and sometimes I'll even like put down colors that I don't like on purpose, knowing that like I'm gonna have to come back and come on top of that, which will create history and create a moment. And sorry, I'm just rambling, but on top of like material stuff, I'm also really big on like removal of paint as well. So like I'm really big on like creating a history on the surface. So part of that is when I begin a painting, all I'm interested in is like deleting the white, right? So and there's a million and one ways you can do that, and I find it really interesting because it's like people who have that sort of paralysis of beginning, it's just like, okay, well, just start by covering all the white, and if you gave 1,000 people 1,000 white canvases and you gave them all the brief, just cover the white, you'll get 1,000 different paintings, because it's like, it sounds like a simple objective, but once you have a brush in your hand, are you going up? Are you going down? Are you going left? Are you going right? Are you using one color? Are you using two colors? And so it's like, I always find that interesting. Like when I give myself the most simple brief of just get rid of the white, all of a sudden the painting's exploding, and all of a sudden I'm having to resist the temptation to grab a piece of charcoal. Like I'm always having to come back to the sort of basic premise of like, just get rid of the white first. And this is how I teach painting, because it's like, then you have something to respond to,
Yeah, I love that. It's such a fantastic way to start a painting.
Just throw yourself at it, and like, nothing can go wrong in painting. Painting can't hurt us. It's like painting is very low stakes. Like we might, but it seduces us into thinking that like there's something we can lose, and the only thing we can lose is like the image that we thought we wanted, right? So it's like, that's why there's so much metaphor in painting in terms of like letting go and letting things be how they are now. And painting really puts us in a really radical relationship with reality, because what is in front of us is that, and it's like you can't deny it. And if you go left instead of right, and you do lose that nice little moment that you had, okay, well now you got to deal with it. Like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to quit, or are you going to now you have a new problem that you didn't 3 seconds ago never existed? And so it's constantly forcing us to adapt and evolve and sort of, and that's kind of why I like it, because I think painting is one of the areas of creativity where it's the most responsive to imagination. It's like if you think it, you can just do it straight away. And just to come back to my idea of what, that's what I was saying before about listening to the painting. So it's like, what I'll do is I'll take a step back and I'll look at the painting, and the first thing that comes into my head I'll do. I'll never question it. And that's what comes back to the mixed media stuff. So what I like about it is often I'll use like the soft pastels. This is getting a bit granular for painters, but whatever. I'll use soft pastels as like placeholder, like color placeholder. So like if I take a step back and the painting says, oh, a little bit of orange here would be cool, rather than having to like go over to my oils and like grab a tube and mix and like grab a clean brush and mix it and put some like thinner in and put some oil in and mix it and paint it. Like by that stage, I might have already forgotten what the painting was asking me to do. But if I can just quickly grab a pastel and quickly act straight away, even though the mark I'm making might not be the final mark, at least it's like representing what could be there later, you know. But it's only because if I don't act immediately, I can forget, you know. And another hot tip. This is a real hot tip. When I do a change on a painting, I try my best not to look at it, because it's really easy to do a change and you take a step back and you just focus on that change, and you don't give the change a chance to live. You're judging it straight away, and you go. And also, what another thing in painting is that maybe that change isn't working now, but you can change the context of the change by changing the rest of the painting. So now when I do changes, I'll just let it live. You know, what's the rush? There's no rush. I do a thing. There's no one's knocking on the door asking for me to justify why I just did this thing. You know, and it's like, so now I'll really let the parts of the painting live and breathe and live with me over days even. And then if I decide that I don't like it or whatever, I can change it. But if you can take a step back and you can not look at what you just did, that's a real, like, you're on your way there, because then you're sort of taking in the whole image and you're not just sort of fixating on one little moment of it. And that's something I found really useful. And yeah, like, just to reiterate, like, coming back to what the painting wants to be and not what you want the painting to be, that takes out a lot of tension and a lot of pressure, and it allows the atmosphere of the studio to stay more buoyant. Because if you get negative, I'm a bad painter, everyone else is better than me, this is another thing why I don't like Instagram, because you might have just spent the morning looking at someone's got a solo in New York and someone's doing a solo in London, and here I am, and just toiling away making the shitty painting that I hate, you know. And that's such an easy, like, headspace to fall into, you know, versus having no real exposure to what else is going on, and just trying to stay present with what's happening in your studio, and stay positive, try to stay buoyant. And if you do make a mistake, and if you feel like the painting maybe does slip in a different direction, just like taking a deep breath and realizing that, like, it doesn't really matter, and that, like, everything's going to be okay, and like, the painting now has just moved in a direction that you weren't expecting, which is kind of exciting, actually. Yeah.
Do you feel like you like to paint in an abstract way for that reason, that you don't like to think about what you're actually going to be making, and that sort of with that focus on form and composition and color and shape and line, that I guess allows you to be more experimental and kind of let the painting lead where you're going? Is that what you love about abstract work?
100%. I mean, and it's like, that's the only way you can really, I mean, painting for me is all about freedom, and I think life in general, more broadly, is about trying to be free, you know, free from as many things as you can possibly be. And I guess painting is just one way where, like, yeah, like I said before, very low stakes, but very high on, like, the invitation to be free is right there for you, you know. And it's like, whether or not you accept it or not. And a lot of people's painting practices are all about control and neuroticism, you know. And it's like, and then the if you want to know something about a person, just look at their paintings. You know what I mean? You're always, everything you need to know is there. No one's painting against their nature. So I'd like to think that, like, my nature is reflected in my paintings. And in terms of the abstraction element, yeah, it's just about play. It's about play and freedom and, like, observing what's happening, you know. And, like, you're really just a conduit between, like, the materials and the surface, and seeing, like, what's possible, you know. Like, let's see like what I'm capable of doing. Let's see what the materials are capable of doing, and yeah, and just pursue that with as much courage, which isn't always easy. But the funny thing about having courage in your practice, again, it sounds ironic, because there's nothing to fear, you know. So all the insecurity and all the fear that we feel in relation to our practices is all manufactured by us, you know. So I guess in a way, it's like my way of like therapizing. I don't think that's a word, but, like, dealing with all that kind of stuff, and and how do I articulate it? Like, yeah, just seeing what I'm capable of doing if when I'm like being like the most myself, you know, like what's the most myself that I can be, and that hopefully will be like manifested in my paintings. Yeah.
And what is it that gives you a sense of coming to the end of a painting or finishing, feeling like the painting is finished?
Yeah, people ask that question a lot, and my friend gave me a really good, funny answer to give to that, but I can't remember what it is now. But like, just no, but like, it really comes down to like for me, like when the painting isn't asking me for anything else. You know, it's pretty simple. Like, and sometimes sometimes I'll finish the painting without knowing it. So like, because I work on a lot of things at once, sometimes I'll just get tired and stop painting a painting, and there's a very strange, mysterious thing that happens in painting or creativity where it's very hard for us to value what we make with any immediacy. So it's like in you know, stopping a painting and coming into the studio the next day is very valuable. But then stopping a painting and not looking at it for 2 months is complete. And then you're like, oh, this painting is actually doing something that I didn't know it was doing, and and now I can appreciate it in a completely different way. So like I've got a painting on my studio at the moment, which is much closer to finished than I thought. But it's all about like, you have to also bear in mind that like painting represents who we are in the moment that we're making it. When we stop a painting and we don't revisit it for a month or 2 months, we're literally a different person when we come back to it. The painting hasn't changed. So it's like we're seeing it with new eyes. We're seeing it. Maybe our taste has changed a little bit in that time. Maybe we're more into minimal painting now. Maybe we don't need to resolve everything that we thought we needed resolving. And I think one of the most like one of the things that's happening in my practice recently is like allowing moments to survive and breathe that I would have felt previously that needed to be like changed, you know? So it's like, oh, that's too loose, or that's too messy, or I don't like that, or I don't like that color, or whatever, which is, again, what I was talking about before with limits, right? Like I'm like defining myself as a painter who doesn't paint like this, right? So it's like, okay, well, what happens if I start to like leave some of these moments that I would normally resolve, and it's like, oh, actually, that part of the painting can survive. And I think that's one area where, like, looking at other people's paintings, like your friend's painting in the foyer, she's let all these moments kind of survive, and it's like the painting becomes like a collection of these moments that we've decided that are kind of exciting us in some way, you know. And it's like sometimes it's very easy to paint the excitement out of a painting so it's like that's something I try, and because once a moment's gone, it's gone, right? So it's like when we do to get these weird little, I don't know, texture bubble, I use a lot of sandpaper as well. So it's like when we do end up with this little moment that is impossible to recreate, like it's so fragile, like just a flick of a wrist, it can be gone forever. So it's like acknowledging that this moment's here is working, and in a way, like to kind of come back to your finished question, it's like the painting for me is finished when I've like acknowledged like every part of the painting is of some value to me, you know, and if they're all sitting in concert with each other in a way that feels balanced, then I guess I can take my hands off it and move on to the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. And you have traveled a lot, as we said, and so you've worked out of Paris and London and Istanbul, and then in 2021 you went to Mexico City.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you were there for 3 years?
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to know how much your painting changes as you move around the world.
So a good question. I think like not as much as maybe someone might think, because I paint kind of intuitively. I mean, some of the paintings I was painting in London weren't very like, I was painting in the middle of winter, in the middle of the pandemic, but you walk in my studio and they'll be like explosive and colorful and organic, you know,
which may be a response to that.
Yeah. And I mean, it always is like, I mean, painting is always like, yeah, like it's always like a synthesis of everything that's happening and everything we are in those moments inescapably. I mean, like more like visually, there's more visual stuff. Like I've got like quite a good visual memory, so I paint from visual memory most of the time. So like when I was in Mexico, for example, I'd go visit sort of like Mesoamerican ancient sites, and I'd look at their art, and then I'd just see the way that their attitude to shape, like just really simple stuff, like in their glyphs, the way that they would do like circle, 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 long, oblong, two smaller circles, and a blobby twist or something like that. But when I'm in my studio and I'm painting and I'm thinking, oh, I need a shape here, I'm just going to go into my mind and think, what shapes have I looked at recently? Oh, those glyphs, they were cool. Oh, those shapes, I like that. And so I'm not like sitting there with a glyph here, like sketching it in, because I feel like that's a bit too sort of transactional, and this is not really the way that appeals to me. I would just borrow that attitude to shape and just naturally sort of like integrate that in. But then again, like now I would almost like, because what I'm painting now is like based on New Zealand experience, I'm having to sort of like, to a certain degree, edit out those responses, So it's like, so it becomes this weird like way of curating your own nature in a way, where like certain motifs I'll get bored of, or like I won't want to repeat them, so I'll kind of park them for a while, and then they'll kind of sneak back in a bit later. But the traveling in general is more about I think the traveling is less about my practice and more about like my like how I want to live, and like it's more about what experiences I want to have, So I've moved around maybe more than some people. I feel like I haven't been like massively intrepid, but like compared to some people, I guess from the outside the optics might appear that way. But yeah, it's I mean, when I was in Istanbul, I was doing like a lot of observational drawing. I was drawing mosques, I was it all kind of goes into the mix, and for me it's more about sensibility. So it's like I try and like keep my sensibility really fluid and open, and like my drawing hand I try and have very relaxed, and so it can be really impulsive, and like because I feel like in a way it's like improvisational as well. So it's kind of, I mean, I love jazz, and I love hip hop, and I like anything that and dance that's improvisational, because when we're improvising, we cut out the part of our brain that's like judging us, because you can't improvise and judge yourself at the same time, and also you can't hide when you improvise as well. So it's very revealing when people, especially like freestyle, like they say whatever comes into their mind, right? And so it's like I like the idea of like sort of co-opting that into my art, where it's like my painting will be a series of sort of improvised moments as well. So it's like maybe at the start I'll do like some super energetic squiggle with like charcoal or something, and if I like it, I'll try and like clock it and allow it to survive to the end, So it's like it's just about collecting all these different energetic flurries that kind of work together, I guess. Yeah.
And you spoke about the artistic community, or the artist community that you developed when you were in Australia. Do you find that it's hard when you're sort of moving around like that to sort of find your people and to sort of feel like you're part of an artist community?
The only time I've actually really felt like I was in a community of artists was probably Mexico City. But in answer to your question, like I don't really find it hard, because I always just trust that like the universe will provide. Like you can go to any, especially if you're going to major cities, they're always going to be full of interesting people. And I could come live in Uruguay, and within a month or two, I'm sure there's some really cool people who live here, because like people are just interesting inherently, and like there's always going to be interesting, cool people everywhere we go, So I always just sort of think I'm more like more than like worried that I'm like leaving behind safety and community. I'm more like excited about what I will discover somewhere else. And also we don't I think that maybe people don't consider so much is that like even when we leave a place, even though we do technically lose some of the sort of immediate camaraderie we might have with the people, but we still have the friendships, and so it's like actually what happens is you end up building these like pockets of communities and friendships around different places, and so so you actually end up having like more than you would, having stayed in one place. But that's not to say there's not value in just staying in one place and building like really deep roots and really deep sense of community. And I'd say in New Zealand at the moment, I definitely don't really have any. I don't have any creative community around me at all at the moment. And that's not to say that like it's not here, but it's just I haven't sorted out at the moment. Yeah,
you'll find it.
But now
sure.
this is this can be today can be one little step in that direction.
Exactly, one small step for James, one big step for
Creative Matters.
Creative Matters.
Maybe that should be the other way around.
Yeah, one small step for Creative Matters, big step for James.
Yeah. I don't want to act like I'm bigger than the platform because clearly I'm not. Yeah.
But it is a good way to get you known, and then anyone listening who would like to connect with you can get in touch. I mean, you're not, as you said, a huge lover of Instagram, but you can be messaged. Is that right?
Yeah. If you're still listening to after my 17-minute long tirade about whatever I was,
it might have been longer than 17 minutes.
No, yeah. I mean, social media. I think we were talking about it before. It's like, I just recently thought to myself, when I'm like 80 years old and I'm lying in bed, am I really gonna, oh, cool, I spent 40,000 hours staring at my phone. And it's like, just terrifies me, that thought. And I was reading this book, Walden by Thoreau recently, which is kind of famous work of American literature, where he goes and lives in the middle of nowhere and builds a hut. And then the whole book's about, I planted my beans and I looked at the lake and I went fishing and all this stuff. And it's quite funny because I think it was written in like 1850 or something. And even back then, so for him, social media and the thing he was trying to avoid, for example, was like the newspapers. And he made this point where I'm not exposed to the news and stuff. And he said this line that really resonated with me. He's like, I'd read the whole newspaper and I couldn't tell you one story that I read. And I was like, well, I can scroll down reels on Instagram for 20 minutes and I can't name you one thing I watched. I just know that I know it happened. I know there was probably some half-naked chick in a bikini, and then I know there was probably some guy getting kicked in the balls, and then there was probably some thing about Israel, and but I didn't take anything from it,
And it's really scary how much time can go past.
Yeah.
When you start scrolling like that.
I guess that just came down to the fact that it's one thing to we all sit around and say, oh, it's so mindless, it's so stupid. But it's okay. So well, I'm gonna take some personal responsibility for myself and just not do it anymore. So I kind of removed myself from it, and basically I've just wanted to it's going to be an organic process. And it's not to say I've benefited massively from Instagram and I've got loads of great friendships I've developed from it. I think what Instagram represents at its fundamental level is really useful and perfect for an artist, and sense of community and sharing your work and all that stuff. It's a great platform for that. Unfortunately, it's just got so much peripheral junk, and it's so it's geared towards such a addictive behavior that now artists and people feel this responsibility to be in contact or available all the time. It's more the passive behavior of sort of scrolling through people's lives. And also in terms of how I had moments where I'd take a photo and I'm instantly thinking about sharing it. I'm like, oh, people will love this. And so there's a sort of quite performative element to it, right? And it's I think as an artist, it's important. I think of it like a musician who is creating an album, right? You might be making the most genius album that's ever been created, but you have to sit on that material sometimes for a year or 2 years, knowing that you've got all this amazing music, but no one's hearing it because it's not. The album has to be finished, and then you share it, and then you get that's when you step on stage and you get everyone telling you you're great, right? Whatever. But now people are incapable of living in that insecure moment. We have to have instant feedback all the time, telling us we're good, telling us we're great, telling us people are liking it, who's liking it, who's not liking it, why didn't they like it, why did they like that one? Oh, that person liked that painting, that means that painting is good, that painting is good. Oh, that painter it's just such a it's such a quagmire of bullshit that means nothing, and it's none of that can possibly serve the process of painting for me. So it's a bit of a no-brainer to remove myself from it, and that way I can live in the equivalent. I can feel my insecurity now, in the studio. I can feel my doubt, and rather than just grab my phone and share a detail of a painting that I like and wait for 200 people to look at it and 50 people to tell me they think it's good, I can just yeah, when you actually break down the experience of using Instagram and you look at it like objectively and you describe it to someone, it just seems kind of insane, you know? And so I guess the whole thing is just to come back to cultivating my own presence. And like when I go traveling, to just enjoy the hike. There's always going to be a time where maybe like a week later or 2 weeks later or a month later or a year later, I'll go back through the photos and I'll like maybe edit together them properly and I'll write a piece of writing and then I'll share it. But at least that has some value and it's like a bit more like curated and a bit more considered rather than just sort of this passive drip of my life all the time.
Every day sharing. Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
And so you were saying that you do receive messages through an app.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So anyone out there interested in and deleting Instagram off your phone, which I really, really recommend, you can get an app called Beeper, which will actually collate all your messaging apps, including like WhatsApp, whatever other ones you use. Yeah. And then you put them all in one place and then you can still receive your messages. Because one thing I found was that like Instagram messaging was pulling me to the app. So like someone would message me and I'd open it and go into it. And then all of a sudden I'm clicking on a story. All of a sudden it's like 10 minutes later and I've got all this. And so it's like it just removed that sort of like addictive pathway back onto the platform. Because the whole thing with those platforms is they get you on and then you can't get off, right? You see this shiny little object like a dog treat or something and you walk towards that. So I guess it was just like, I'm 40 years old. I'm a fully grown man. What am I doing staring at my phone like a 16-year-old kid, like going, I just,
who cares in a way?
Yeah.
And it is funny. I mean, me with the podcast, it's like, it's a podcast and it appears on podcast apps and surely that should be enough. And it can be, passed from friend to friend or word of mouth, people hear about it. And it would be great if I could just think that's enough.
Yeah.
Because that is a lot already, just to create that.
Yeah.
But you still have this kind of nagging thing in the back of your head that you need to get it out there on Instagram and Facebook and all that. And I'm actually starting to kind of ease off a little bit with that because it's actually not what it's about.
Yeah.
I already have a platform and that's a podcast platform. I don't actually need to supply all these visuals really.
And also, like, exactly, and like, I mean, there's no limit to how much you could put into it, right? I mean, it's as exhibited by the fact that like people just live their whole life in that space now. And I guess like, I don't want to come across as a sort of grumpy old man, like yelling at clouds or whatever, because like there's always been this generational thing where like the older generation look down on it, whatever it is, TV or and think, oh, those crazy kids. But like, there's something different. Like this, like the technology is so insidious and it's so damaging that like there's something a little bit different in this. And it's like, I think what you're describing do the podcast, make a thing, share the thing on Instagram or whatever, but then just don't look at your phone every 30 seconds to see who's liking it or who's commenting it. Like, I'm not against the platform. It's just about like making, like using it as a tool.
And how you engage with it.
Yeah. Using it as a tool and just being very conscious of how you engage with it, not totally like subconscious where it's just like passive and it's like just part of your everyday life. Wake up in the morning, roll over, start scrolling through junk, and it's like, as a painter as well, I think it's great to like expose yourself to other people's work and like, but like, there's art galleries for that. There's books for that kind of stuff. And yeah, internet as well is great, but just, I think the more any artist or any person can be their most like distilled, unique, individual, powerful self, the better. And like, and then to look at all the different things you have in your life that are pulling you away from being that person. Well, I can only talk about myself. So it's like, that was taking me away from my like fully realized, most powerful version of myself. And I just recognized that. And I just thought, I don't want this in my life anymore. It's just bad energy. And I don't want to like,
you made a choice, which is good.
Yeah. I don't want to like bang the drum too long on that one, but that's my current position.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
And you've been traveling really for 15 years and now 2024, you came back to New Zealand. How are you finding being back? Have you noticed many big changes?
Changes. You know what? I don't think I have noticed that many changes, and that's probably why I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so grateful to be back in New Zealand. I think we live in, if not one of the most beautiful parts of the planet. We've got one of the most unique ecosystems. We've got clearly some of the most beautiful landscapes, and we don't have to share it with anyone. There's only 4 or 5 million people here. The air's fresh, the grass is green. We're sitting here surrounded by palms and chirping birds. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think like after living overseas for so long, I just really appreciate what New Zealand has to offer now. And like we are so lucky to have it. And that's why I've been trying to get in the ocean as much as I can. Just be in nature as much as I can. Like I just think that there's something deeply therapeutic and like it's sort of like optimism generating being in nature. Like I feel like everything's going to be okay when I'm at the beach and the sun's going down and everything's beautiful and sort of epic around me and the waves are breaking and the wind's tearing through. Like it just feels like, yeah. And it's so accessible. You just get into it. Like go to the South Island, drive around, go into the mountains, go for a hike, like take advantage of it. And also like, I'm also kind of aware of like, I want to take advantage of it while I'm sort of like able bodied, like I'm not going to be able to do like a 10-kilometer hike my whole life, So yeah, I'm a big advocate of New Zealand, and actually, like that's kind of why my work, I think, has sort of effortlessly and subconsciously just sort of segued into painting New Zealand landscapes, and because like in Mexico and London, my practice was never really about place, and that was something I think that was a bit of a shortcoming of the abstract stuff, which was like they were just kind of these like visual ecosystems, and they were fun and playful, and they, they were, that for where I was at the time, that was what was happening, But now I really like the idea of honoring place more and having suggestions of place in the work. It's not super literal. Like it could just be like a curve in the background that I've taken from a hike or something, or it could be an imaginary one. But like when I'm working from references from plants, these are plants that I've seen with my own eyes. They're in places that I love, and the places that I'm passionate about. And like they imbue the work with a kind of effortless story already. Like that's the concept. The concept is I went to a place I love. I took photos of a place that means something to me. I came back to my studio and I painted them, and there's nothing else. That's it. And I think that's enough.
It's personal.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this long, elaborate explanation of like long words that no one knows and the sort of like word salad of absolute meaningless drivel to like justify my paintings, which is like a lot of kind of the contemporary art world kind of falls into this sort of like having to like, I don't know, like justify the work in a way, and
complicate it sometimes.
Oh, completely complicated. And also like write this garbage that no one even wants to read anyway. So yeah, like, I mean, we haven't really touched on that kind of stuff, but like overall, I'm quite critical on like the contemporary painting art scene in terms of how it sort of painters are just turned more into like artisans of like churning out a certain style, There's not like, it doesn't really reward constant evolution and constant change, because galleries and curators and stuff want to be able to predict and know what you're going to make, basically, which is fair enough.
And what's going to sell.
I get that. I get there is a commercial direction to things, and it's fair enough that they might want to have some idea of what you're going to make, But like the idea of a painter thinking that they found a style and then only painting with that palette and only painting with those shapes and only doing a certain thing for like the next 20 years of their life or something, like that to me is kind of not, that's kind of a counter, like that's kind of, I don't know, in a way it's like not what painting's about for me. It should, for me, painting is about like expansion, like of the practice, expansion of the self, and then like taking chances, being courageous, and like and trying to like experience even like the mildest degree of what you're capable of, because we're all very our potential is almost limitless, right? Look, yesterday I painted for like 6 hours, maybe I could have painted for 9 hours, maybe I could have really pushed myself, and maybe every day of my life I could do more exercise and I could eat more healthy, and like whatever the perfect version of myself is, I'm never going to experience that, so I accept that, but like I do want to when I get to the end of the journey, want to know that I actually, like, in my practice, which is the one thing that I had true sovereignty and control over, I really did honestly push myself and make the best paintings that I could have made. And when I'm in my studio, I look around, and if I have to think to myself, these are the best paintings I can make, you know? And that's something, that's like the one promise that I can make to like collectors and to artists and curators. And I will always be making the best paintings that I can make. I'll never like ever take a shortcut or
compromise.
Yeah, because no, that's it's not what it's about for me. And I do believe that the invitation is there to see what we're made of, you know? Yeah. And it's not to say painting is always easy, you know, like it brings up a lot of challenges, and like, and yourself and your perception and your, like I was saying before, with like your insecurity and your identity, like it brings up all that stuff, you know? But like you kind of just have to silence that and just keep pursuing what you want and what feels good for you and what you believe in, you know? Like that's really important, having faith in yourself. Like, because as soon as an artist wavers in faith of themselves, it's kind of like the ground floor on the foundation, you know? Like if that's getting wobbly, it's hard to make, you know? But if we can just maintain like the faith and the enough confidence in ourselves and what we're doing is worthwhile, then we've got something to pursue, and then we can just keep going. But yeah, just try. I would encourage all creative people, or any people in general, not to say that like I consider myself some kind of guru that's like levitating on air. Very much not. But like if you can get it, if you can, painting and creative pursuits are very psychological. So it's like if you can get on top of the psychological element of your practice, then you're going to be able to access your power and potential much more easily, you know. But if you're already in your head and telling yourself a story that you're not good enough, that other people are better, that you're not good, that this is a waste of time, that you're useless, blah blah, then it's just kind of like it's never going to work, you know. So it's like, and I say this because I've come across a lot of people, and you hear it all the time. Oh, I was in an art class when I was 16, and my art teacher said I wasn't very good at art, so I just stopped. And it's like, well, that's just one person's opinion. And who's to say that art teacher is, you know? So it's like you have to be very sensitive around these subjects when you're talking to people, you know? And like, I really try my best to actively encourage people to step into their own power and to see what they have to offer. And that's why I like to teach what I've learned from a material point of view. Like, this is how I do it. I just do this and I mix that and I just go like this. And it's like, and I like the thing about like art, painting is like, you could literally, someone could come into my studio every day for a month. I could teach them every single thing I know. And then they could do a painting. And it's not going to be that much to do with what I showed them, like because they're going to work out real quick that they're going to have to be making their own decisions, you know. So it's like, yeah, it might look stylistically in the direction of something, because it's like, but like at the end of the day, they're going to be having to make their own decisions. And once you've made one, once you've made 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on a canvas, you're on your own. Like,
yeah.
So it's like, that's why I'm not like precious about helping people or showing people what I do, because it's like, because I know that like even I can't reproduce what I make, you know? And I think that's like the sign of a painter who's making interesting work, is that if the painter themselves can't reproduce it, you know? If you're making painting that like you can teach someone to make, then it's probably a sign that you're not painting with as much courage or conviction as maybe you're capable of. Yeah. And we get into like stylistic, because what happens is a painter, they start making paintings and they find something that works, and they kind of create a groove for themselves, right? So it's like I was saying before, I'm this kind of painter, I use these kind of colors, I make these kind of paintings. And if you do that for long enough, the groove starts to become a canyon. And by the time you're down the canyon, you're looking either side, and you can't get out. And and that's why, and a lot of painters fall victim to that. And so I've always tried to like make sure that I'm not building up too much of a canyon for myself. And the only way to do that is just by making different images. And so it doesn't always work out that well. Like well, that this did have a happy ending, but like I mentioned before, that gallerist who came into my studio, and she'd only seen the stuff I'd made on my Instagram account, and she came into my studio, and everything was like drastically different. It was like very simple, very like blocky, and I could kind of see her thinking like, "Oh, this isn't really what I was expecting," and I could kind of see her, I was on top of her tongue, and not because like no one ever wants to say it, but like, oh, I kind of like prefer your old work, you know, like that's what no one wants to hear, you know. And I even said it for her. I was like, I can tell that you were expecting something else, you know, and we kind of penciled in a show. And she kind of said to me, and she was honest with me, she said, like, I need to kind of see something else, like, in a different direction to, like, before I confirm the show. Because I was like, I'm not really, like, more, she essentially was saying, like, this work isn't really the work that's exciting me, you know, which is fine. But, and so now I'm painting another body of work, but, like, I guess the moral of the story is that, like, another gallerist came to my show, to my studio, and she saw those works and she loved those works and she's put them in a show. So it's like, but had I sort of like hung all my expectations and stuff on this one other person, like it would have been easy to feel like, oh, maybe this body of work's not strong.
Maybe I should go back to what I was doing
exactly
before.
So it's like, but like because I believe it in my heart that this work's strong, and because I trust in myself and whatever my intuitions were to make the work, then it's like it doesn't really matter what one other person says. And at the end of the day, it worked out fine. And this other gallerist really liked this body of work. So
you are looking for galleries in Auckland to be represented by?
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit wary of like representation at the moment. It's not to say that I think the way I want to do it is that I would prefer to sort of establish some relationships with different galleries. Because bear in mind, when I left New Zealand, I wasn't a painter. So I kind of came back starting from scratch, you know?
Yeah. And how are you communicating with people and getting your work out there if you're not using some of the more traditional avenues?
Well, like I said, I still kind of like, because I still have, I mean, I should also mention that like taking Instagram off my phone, which was the major behavior change, but I can still access it on my browser. Yeah. I haven't been, but it's still there. So it's not like I'm totally disconnected. So like they just messaged me. And also, one of the gallerists was an old friend of mine from years ago who I kind of knew, and I just invited her to my studio. And she's chucking some work in a group show, which is cool.
It's actually a good idea to invite a gallerist to your studio.
Oh,
it's a nice way to do it.
It's like that's the way it's done. Yeah. Like
but a lot of people email and make contact that way.
Oh,
but
right.
To have the people actually come to you to visit.
Oh, 100%
is the way to go.
They got to see the work, and they got to meet you as well. And I mean, no, I because also I paint relatively large paintings. It's really important that like people come and see them in the flesh, you know, because it's like if you're just looking at stuff on a screen, so much stuff is lost. But yeah, I would also encourage any painters to like just reach out to people and just to have a bit of one thing that's really important is that like no one will ever believe it. No one will ever believe in you until you believe in yourself, you know. So it's like it's really important to like project. To own it and not be apologetic about your practice. Don't be afraid of telling people you're an artist. Don't be afraid of telling people you're a photographer. Just because it's like you have to own it before anyone else will. If we can just dedicate ourselves to the process rather than result, that's a huge shift in your mind. If when we begin a painting, we're just turning up because we want the feeling of painting, and that's why I go to the studio. Because I want to feel the feeling of painting. It's not about object generation for me. It's about the fact that I want to feel the feeling of painting. So it's like the fact that there's paintings at the end of the process is just a sort of collateral benefit, you know?
I love that way of thinking. I think that's very empowering. I think it's a great way to think, and I think that's what I need to do more myself in my own art practice. Well, James, we are going to finish off now. We aren't going to go through the questions because I feel like you have talked about so many different interesting things. I don't want to kind of end on a not so exciting note.
A dry note. With
the questions. So, I think it's been a little bit of a different view on an artist's life, this conversation, and that's been fantastic. You haven't listened to the podcast, which is quite unusual. Normally the people who come have listened. But in some ways, it's actually a great thing too, because you've really brought your own self to this conversation. And it's been quite thought provoking and inspiring. So thank you very much for sharing your ideas.
Thank you for inviting me. Because it's one thing to talk about making art, because it's easy to talk about making art. And sometimes, which is ironic because I am a talker and I love words, but like sometimes I think a lot of the stuff that we're discussing is kind of implied or implicit in the act of just doing, So I would always just encourage people to write rather than think about doing something or talk about doing something in regards to painting or their creative outputs, is just to just sort of do it and not wait till the next day or not wait until you have the perfect set of circumstances, just to make do with what you have and the best you can in that moment. That's kind of, I think, a relatively good tool or psychological tool in terms of just actually getting stuff done.
Yeah, I agree. And you have really made me think about my own art practice. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.